The state of your nervous system impacts everybody around you. So the two most important things that we can do to lead well in our lives are to, number one, regulate our nervous system. Number two, work with the parts of us that have been leading and show them that we, adult us, can take over the reins and lead now so they don't have to, so they can rest. And we can be in the role of leading from a place of wholeness and a place of regulation. Nervous systems affect nervous systems. So we have mirror neurons. And if my nervous system is regulated, it's going to regulate everyone around me. The truth is, if you want the highest level of success as a leader, the state of your nervous system is the most important thing to focus on.
Welcome to You Make Sense. This podcast is a manual to understanding your human experience so that you can navigate the world with freedom, ease, empowerment, and create the life that you desire. Remember, you make sense, all parts, always.
So in this episode, we're going to talk about how to be in a position of leadership in a way that allows you to also have a full life filled with joy and ease. And for a lot of us, it feels like we have to choose between one or the other. So if I want to be highly successful, I'm going to have to sacrifice a lot of life. Or if I want to lead well and be in a position of power, I'm not going to be able to have the fullness that I desire. And so today we're going to talk about how actually to lead well, it is imperative that we have fullness of life. And it's really common that, we might look up to people who are maybe further along in their career or their life experience than we are. Maybe, somebody is in your field and they're running a big corporation, or they've been able to manifest and create the life that you're really wanting, or their version of that. And we can idolize a lot of these people. A large portion of people who are highly successful are actually motivated in their success, or to gain greater success. Their motivation is coming from unresolved trauma and the things that they never got in their past. So today we're going to talk about how do we actually lead in a way that is coming from health, from fullness of self, that we don't feel like we're a prisoner to our success or a prisoner to our leadership, so that you can have the full life you are here to have. And everything that I'm going to talk about in this episode are things that I relate entirely to very much in my own life and my orientation towards leadership and success as well. And so I'll talk a bit about my own process of shifting that, and then give you some helpful things you can do to begin shifting it too. I also just want to name that this episode is not just for people who are in leadership positions in your work. If you are a parent, if you lead in your community, in any way, this episode is for you. So I first want to look at and get curious about if we might be leading from a place of dysregulation in our nervous system, which is active self-protection. And if that occurs, that means we are leading from a protective part of ourselves. And we're going to get curious about what those different parts may look like. But here are some overarching clues that may be happening for you. Number one, if you find yourself never being able to slow down, meaning it's never quite enough, I keep moving and going forward, and I don't make much time for other things in my life, those are all clues that you might be leading from dysregulation or from a protective part. Like there's a ticking time bomb. I'm going to run out of time. Someone's going to take my idea. So I'm always on the move. Now, the result of this is that we're not going to experience or have the fullness of life that we all need to thrive. And why is that? Because if a protective part of me is running the show, that part cares first and foremost about my safety, my survival, and me getting my primary needs met of love, connection, belonging, value, and so on. So the fullness of life stuff goes to the side. So if you find yourself having a really imbalanced life, that is a clue that you're likely leading from dysregulation in a protective part. If you have ever identified as a workaholic, that's a clue. If you don't make much time for or even prioritize connection and community and relationship or romantic partnership, that's all a clue as well. Perhaps you find yourself not having hobbies. I don't spend time doing anything that isn't going to move the needle in terms of my career, my leadership. All of these are clues that I am likely leading from dysregulation. And I did all of those things. I remember early on in my healing journey, I was so dead set on serving the world in the particular way I felt called to that I didn't see a importance or a priority in maintaining or building relationships, because those take a lot of time. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of effort. And my system was saying that, yeah, that might be nice to have, but I need to focus on the most important thing, which is being valuable and good enough. And through success, that was a way that I was able to gain some semblance of those things. So that meant personal life went to the side. So if you notice that your life is not balanced, if you notice that it feels like there's never enough time, if you notice that you're feeling burnt out, all of those are clues that you may be leading in this way. So before we get to the why behind leading from dysregulation and protective parts, I just want to quickly paint a picture of what it looks like to be leading from a place of regulation and embodiment. And for yourself, just think about for a moment as I'm saying these things, do I embody those? Is that what my orientation towards leadership or not? So when we're actually embodied in leadership, in terms of our purpose, that is not our identity. So I am me, and my purpose is a part of my life, but it isn't my identity. That's certainly a big part of this. Another portion of it is I'm not in a hurry. So I'm passionate about what I'm doing in whatever form of leadership that I'm in, but it is not taking up the entirety of my life, and I am not rushing the process. And I listen to what my body needs. So if I need to slow things down, if I need to take some time off, I am able to really be connected to that internal listening. Now, of course, if you're saying, well, I'm in a startup or my company is doing this big stretch at the moment, there may be times where even when you're embodied in leadership that I'm having a bigger push happen. And after that, I allow my system to have rest. I actually take time away from it. So I'm able to disconnect, and I do other things that nourish me, that are outside of my purpose, and I value them just as much as I value being in leadership. I also am able to relinquish control. I'm not controlling the people that I lead and micromanaging them, or controlling the outcome. I am able to follow the natural rhythm of what wants to happen, and I'm not catastrophizing possibilities of how things could go wrong. I'm also not in a constant race with others, like a comparison race, and thinking about who is further ahead. I also am able to really celebrate the shifts and the changes and the accomplishments and really sit with them and be with them. I don't rush past them. Those are just some of the qualities of what it's like to be in embodied leadership. And if you're thinking like, oh, that's not really the way that I approach it, well, we're going to talk about how we do. But first, I want to get into why we might be approaching leadership from a place of dysregulation and protective parts. So dysregulation in our nervous system is simply active self-protection. What's occurring is our nervous system has decided that it doesn't think we're safe. And in order to maintain safety, it kind of takes over the steering wheel of our lives, and it will do everything that it can to ensure our survival. Now, when it comes to parts work, the parts that we have internally resource our nervous system to support them to get their job done. So if you are a person who is highly successful, you are always striving and you're focused on achievement in your life, in leadership, it is likely that you have a very powerful protective part that learned likely long ago how to get your primary needs met by being in a place of success. Now, like all protectors, this protective part of you is protecting a vulnerable part. Vulnerable parts of us are the versions of ourselves who experienced the overwhelming or traumatic things in our lives. So let's say that in your childhood, everybody in your family were high-achieving people. And the way that you received love was through being high-achieving, in focusing on the outcome or results. So Instead of allowing you to be free to be a kid, what would have happened is you would have developed this protector that says, we don't have time for that. In order for us to get love, we have to be the best in our class. We have to join every club because then we'll belong in this family of origin. Others of you, if you grew up in a home where love was withheld, maybe you had parents or caregivers who worked 3 jobs and they weren't around all the time, or you were neglected, and for many other reasons, my system did not get my primary needs met of love, connection, safety, belonging, and feeling like as I am is enough. So very intelligently, we develop these internal protectors who often learn, when I go to school, in that environment, if I become the best at maybe a particular subject or maybe all subjects, or I join every club and, am doing all of the things, I get attention from my teacher. I get overall attention from the school, like I get an award at the end of the year or at the end of that quarter. The drama teacher or the music teacher loves me the most. And the result is I am getting my primary needs met outside of my home in a way that actually works. Isn't that smart that we learn to do that? So these protective parts of us say, wow, how amazing. When I do these things, the vulnerable parts are okay. So shouldn't we keep doing those things? And shouldn't we prioritize those things over other stuff like recess or play or whatever else? Absolutely. This is a beautiful and smart adaptive strategy that so many of us learn because we had to. And so we get a lot of obviously secondary benefit from receiving that love. We also get a lot of success from it. So these parts grow and develop with us. They join us in high school, they join us in college, and guess what? They join you in your leadership as an adult. So I just want to go over some of the main heavy hitters of protective parts that may be doing the leadership in our lives. For some of us, we have a striver part. So this protective part, their job is to always be looking towards how you could do more, be more. So you set a goal or set a bar. You do everything to ensure that you get to that bar. They're very determined. Why? Because their goal, by the way, their goal isn't really that success. Their goal is what you get from that success, which is the love and being special. By the way, every kid wants to feel special, but if you didn't feel special, your system is going to find a way to be special outside of just being you. So yeah, it's about the thing we're doing in leadership, but if you're leading from a part, it's really about that. So that striver sets the bar. Once you get to the bar, you know what they do? They raise the bar. You enjoy it for 3 seconds and they raise the bar. And it will be an endless pursuit for the rest of your life. It will never be enough. It's like a fleeting moment of, I'm worthy, I'm special. You get on the New York Times bestseller list that'll last all of a week or 2 weeks. And guess what's going to happen after that? It won't be enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. It's not enough. I need more. A lot of us have protective parts that can't slow down. I'm always going, I'm always doing. I used to say this all the time. I would complain about how busy I was. And at some point, a friend said to me, she was like, because, I have my own company. She said, Sarah, who's setting the timelines? This is your company. And I was like, you're right. It is me. I had to work with this protective part of myself that had me on a hamster wheel because this was how my parts as well had gained a sense of safety, control. This is how they learned to operate when it came to leading in any form or success in any form in life. A lot of us have a protective part that leads from a place of control. You may notice that as a parent, that you micromanage your kids. That term helicopter parent is really coming from protective parts of you leading within your home. Instead of allowing your child to be fully themselves, the fear is something bad might happen to them if I don't micromanage them. And the same goes as a leader in a company or in an organization. As you're leading, by the way, even as a therapist, clinician, and practitioner, you need to really watch out for this. Am I outcome focused? And if I'm outcome focused, I am not present to what that person actually needs from me, because that's a controlling behavior, is to simply allow their system to be doing the work, and I'm being of support in ushering this process to occur. So if you have a company, that's going to look like micromanaging everybody that works for you. This might even happen subtly. You can't remove yourself energetically. There's always this fear of it's going to fall apart if I'm not controlling. So again, when we have parts like that running the show, they're not just going to relinquish that job that they have because it's worked. It's worked often really well. And I want to name that there are plenty of people, well-known people in the world that you know that are likely leading from this way. And I don't care how much success you have and how much money you have and how much adoration you have from the world. If it is coming from a deep-rooted internal sense that as I am, the vulnerable part, as I am, is not enough, is not good, is not special, is not lovable, you cannot have full happiness. It only comes when we shift that and we start to give that vulnerable part the things that success can never give them. If you find yourself confused about why you can't seem to live the life you're here to live, I want you to know there are reasons why you're finding yourself stuck. And that means there are things that we can do to begin shifting this. I've created an entirely free workbook for you that's going to teach you about the system living inside of your body that is responsible for your entire experience. This system also holds the key to unlocking the life you desire. It's called your autonomic nervous system. If you're interested in learning more and you want free tools that are backed by science, download my free workbook called How to Gain Control Over How You Feel. Link in show notes to get yours. Before we get to that, I just want to talk about some other protective parts that can show up around leadership. And because if you're saying to yourself, well, I really want to be in my purpose, but I find I can't even step into it. A lot of us have parts that avoid our leadership because they are so afraid of us taking up space. I had a part that was so terrified of being fully in my calling because that part of me would say, if I'm really big, like taking up space and serving, I'm going to hurt people. Meaning, I don't want anybody to ever feel bad the way that I felt bad. So that part thought, only if I'm small and meek will I not hurt anybody. And if I'm actually in my aliveness and my bigness, it'll make people feel bad. So that inhibited me from stepping into my purpose. Some of you might have that part of you. The avoidant part that I said, we, continue to push things away or not step towards them. Being a perpetual student, I just continue to go back to school or take more programs or learn more as a way to avoid being in leadership. Also, being an indecision. This is a really smart way to keep us from ever embodying what we are here to do. So it's really important to work with those parts of ourselves as well. So as you can see, there are many types of protective parts that can show up when it comes to leading in our lives. Now, the way that we show up in our leadership, it trickles out to everybody around me. So that example that I gave of being a striver. So if I am setting the bar and then I get to the bar, raise the bar, if I do that with my kids, what is the message I'm sending them? Well, what we just did, it's not really enough. You could be more. What's happening in your company if you do that? You're sending the message that it wasn't that great. So what I feel internally about myself, I am now sending the message that this is true for all of us. So it trickles out to everybody around us. It trickles out to our partners. So if in my own life, I'm striving with myself all the time, like it's never enough, my healing's never enough. Do you know what you're going to do to your partner? You're going to project that onto them. You're going to project it onto your kids. You're going to project it onto your work. And so doing this kind of really important work around shifting the way that we lead, it not only helps you, it helps everybody around you. As we begin this work, just know that your protective parts are going to be resistant to making this change because they likely got wild success from leading in the way that they learned to. And so they're not going to think it can be done in another way. The protective parts usually have very black and white thinking. So for that striving part, that doer part, the controlling part, to them, the idea of doing this from regulation and from adult you, they think like everything's going to fall apart. You're going to just lay on a beach somewhere and eat coconuts and nothing will ever happen. So what do they need in order to believe this? they need evidence. In a moment, I'm going to talk about how we do that. But before we do, the last thing I want to say before I give you some practical work around how we shift this is that I really want you to know the state of your nervous system impacts everybody around you. So the two most important things that we can do to lead well in our lives are to, number one, regulate our nervous system. Number two, work with the parts of us that have been leading and show them that we, adult us, can take over the reins and lead now so they don't have to, so they can rest. And we can be in the role of leading from a place of wholeness and a place of regulation. Nervous systems affect nervous systems. So we have mirror neurons. And if my nervous system is regulated, it's going to regulate everyone around me. So the truth is, if you want the highest level of success as a leader in the company you work for or that you run or whatever it is that you're doing as a leader, the state of your nervous system is the most important thing to focus on. Have you ever noticed that when you're around somebody who is regulated, they're joyful, they're curious, they're alive, they're open? What does it do? It makes you feel that way. That's how mirror neurons work. What happens when you're around someone who is stressed out all the time? They nitpick things that you do. What does it do? It puts you on eggshells. It makes you really stressed. And when you're dysregulated, your full brain isn't working, which means you don't have access to highest levels of creativity, critical thinking, and of course, feeling good in your bodies. So the more regulated you are, the more regulated everybody around you becomes. If you want to parent well, the most important thing is your regulated nervous system, because your entire family unit responds to the state of what's happening in your nervous system. So number one, most important thing to work on, right? Bringing regulation to your nervous system. We're going to link out in the show notes a couple of programs I have in case you're curious about that work that I have that are specifically focused on nervous system regulation. It is incredibly important for leaders, and the most impactful leaders in the world are people who are doing it from this place. Now, the second thing, as I named, is we have to work with these parts of ourselves. So number one, you have to get to know what it feels like to be adult you. A lot of us don't even know that. Again, as I named, there are people running huge corporations that you know the name of. They're not running those from adult self. They're running those from a little kid who was never made to feel loved. And so a lot of the times when you hear about people doing pretty awful things inside of leadership, like they're walking all over other people, or they don't care if they harm someone or hurt someone to get to where they want to go, that's all coming from self-protection. So what we need to do is feel into, who is adult me? What does adult me feel like in my body? I've got lots of episodes on how we anchor into that and connect to it, but you have to feel it. You can think of just any moment in time where you felt really regulated. That was adult you. What does that part of me feel like? And then from that place, what I really invite in is marinating in a possible future of being in leadership from this place. What does that look like? Feel it in your body. Let your body actually tell you. So what will my life look like a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, if I'm actually leading from this place and from this lens? Let yourself feel it in your body. What you will come into is, it is a race to nowhere. Where are we going? The only place we are is here. And if I'm only here, I'm never anywhere else, then I better get used to enjoying being here. And what transpires or occurs is I am now able to take in what is happening in this present moment right in front of me. And I also realize I'm in a race with no one. There is nobody that is exactly like you doing what you are here to do, leading the way that you are. And it opens us up in a really beautiful way. So I invite you to marinate in that. What would it look like to parent from this place, to lead your company or where the place that you work from this orientation? It will be likely wildly different than the way that you've led in the past. And then what we have to do is we have to work with that protector, get to know them. That protector isn't going to budge if they think you want them to just leave the building forever. The reason that you are a visionary, the reason that you are so devoted to whatever it is that you do is in part because of that protector. So what we want to do is invite them in to say, hey, join me on this journey. All of these strengths that you have, I would love for you to be a part of it with me. And there's a way that we can explore this that will be entirely different. Let me show you. And the protective parts are going to need a lot of data points to see that this is right. So I don't want you to think that overnight you're going to be going from working 7 days a week to working 5 days a week. This is going to take time. And a simple example of that, like for myself, and I used to work 7 days a week, is I started with working 6.5 and tolerating what would it be like to not complete what I'm doing. Or I'm going to stop working. Like if you're working until 9 o'clock at night, what would it be like to stop at 7:30? And, the more that we do this, the parts see, oh, this is safe. Then you take a day off on the weekend and you do something that actually makes you feel joyful outside of work. And what you notice is you go to work on Monday and all of the sudden you have the most productive day you've had in a month. The protective parts are getting data that when I nourish myself, everything goes better. Or in your parenting, you actually take time away for yourself. What you'll notice is you'll come back and you'll be such a better parent, more engaged, more connected. So we have to titrate this and show these parts it is safe to slow down. It is safe to let go. It is safe to stop micromanaging. So to actually allow the process to unfold, allow the people that work for you or your children to be who they are. And the more that you do that, the more you see, first of all, oh my gosh, so much of my energy has been wasted. Truly. I remember that for myself, like on the weekends, I take time off, like quote unquote time off. And it felt like energetically, I was still connected to every single thing inside of my business. So even if I was at the beach, I wasn't fully enjoying it. I was just feeling exhausted because I was still working energetically. The protective part was. The more that you can show these parts, hey, let's just take 30 minutes to allow ourselves to disconnect energetically from it. And by the way, the parts aren't going to be able to do that without adult use help. The more that we do this, the more that we are actually able to take all that energy that's being poured out and nourish ourselves with it. And again, that makes us so much better when we are in the role of leadership that we're in. The fear can be when we begin coming into this work, the fear might be like, oh my gosh, am I going to lose who I am? No, you're going to come more into the fullness of who you are. And those beautiful traits of your protectors get alchemized into supporting you to lead in even more of a full way, to have much more success than you could ever imagine. And the beautiful part is those moments of success, like the results, the big goal I got to, become much less important. And what becomes most important is the unfolding right in front of me, the aliveness that I get to feel when I'm passionate about what I'm doing. That's the whole thing. Or the connection that I get to feel with the other people that I'm doing this with, or the experience of being so fully connected to your family. That's the juice. That's the thing that we really want. And it allows for life to be lived in such a more beautiful way. If everyone in our world did this, our political system would be totally different. If everyone was leading from regulation. What we see happening in our world right now is that everyone is leading from these protective parts and from dysregulation, which is why we are all against each other, which is why everybody is becoming enemies, which is why no one can hear each other, because I am not actually embodied in regulation. The more regulated leaders we have, the more healed our world becomes. Science confirms that it's not possible to have a full, happy, fulfilling life unless we are predominantly experiencing it from regulation. Your nervous system has the power to either keep you stuck living a smaller life than you feel called to, or to unlock the life you are here to live so that you can step into the fullness that you are here for and feel better in your body in the process. This work not only supports us to embody our purpose, it supports us to have the relationships we desire to live the fully expressed version of life that we are here for. Navigating Your Nervous System is a 6-week online program I created to support you to harness the power of your nervous system so that you can be in the driver's seat of your life and heal the past in the process. Over the course of 6 weeks, I'm going to give you tangible, somatic, therapeutic tools to get into the driver's seat of this system so that you can step towards the life that you desire and so deeply deserve. You can join the waitlist for limited time money off the program. Check the show notes to join. So now we're going to get to the Q&A portion of this episode. If you have any questions that you would like to submit via an audio recording or a video, we would love for you to do that. So we'll link out exactly how to do it in the show notes. Let's get to the first question that we have today.
Hi, Sarah. My name is Lauren. Love your work. You know that question they say if you could interview or get coffee with one person, who would it be? Mine would be you. I do have a question as someone that works in mental health. I work on the Suicide Lifeline. So I'm constantly dealing with traumatized people all day, every day. And I get very burnt out as someone that has a trauma history and dysregulated nervous system. So I guess my question is how to stay regulated when you are working or dealing with people that are highly dysregulated. How can I not let that vicarious trauma rub off on me? I do all the self-care things, but honestly, I do get compassion fatigued a lot of the time. And if I want to stay in this field, I need to figure out a better way to deal. Any insight or advice you can recommend would be highly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that incredible compliment. Oh my goodness. By the way, for everyone listening, I purposely don't listen to these questions before. So that's the first time I'm hearing this, and just want to name, that's such a incredibly, truly generous compliment that you gave me. So thank you for saying that. And thank you for the very important work you do in the world. So a few things about this that I want to name. So if we are in any helping profession at all, and we're providing support to other people, it is really vital that we are taking time to consistently regulate and nourish our own nervous systems. So just a few practical ways that I like to think about this. I really want you to think about on your days off, what am I doing that actually feeds and fuels me? For me, those are things like going in nature, dancing with friends, going to the beach, whatever it is for you that really nourishes you. I want you to engage in those activities. That's really different than things that numb us. Like I'm exhausted at the end of the day, so I just watch this TV show. That's not deep nourishment. So how can I make sure I'm deeply nourished? And then how can I regulate throughout the day when I'm noticing that there is overwhelm occurring? So let's say that you're on a call that's, obviously very overwhelming for your system. We want to have as many boundary practices as possible throughout the day that we can, because everything is energy. So when you are serving another person, their energy is coming towards you. And the work is that we have to learn how to join another in their experience without merging with them. Merging means I am taking on their energy. Joining is I have a boundary and I'm not embodying the energy that you are experiencing, because if I do that, neither of us are going to be helped. And long term, that creates vicarious trauma and compassion fatigue. So I really want you to focus on that. Even in between calls, is it possible, or every few calls, can I get up and do a regulating tool? We're going to link out here actually for you a couple programs that I have that focus on this. 2 programs that focus on the nervous system, and then we're going to link out another that also focuses on somatic boundary setting. This is really, really important. The more that we do this, the more we can tolerate another person's activation without merging with them around it. But a simple tool you can also use is, after you get off a call, I want you to ask yourself, what color is that person's energy if it could be a color? Maybe it's like bright red or brown. And I want you to ask yourself, how close is that energy to me? And if it feels like, oh my gosh, it's inside of me or it's right next to me, I want you to use your hands to simply move the energy away from you. Maybe you even incorporate a sound as you do it, like a hum or a om. There's therapeutic sounds that I give as well in the work that I do. So I need to move the energy away from me. Simple things like washing my hands. All of this is clearing or moving their energy away from you. And this is important because if I take on the energy of the suffering of the world, I will begin to suffer too, and then there won't be anyone to help. I do this almost every day in my work. If I'm on a big call with, 500 people on it. So I'm not actually hearing anyone, but I am fully in the energy of that group. And why are people coming to me? Because they want support. And so my job is to provide that support in a way that I am joining, not merging. So after, I will do things like open my window. Usually at the end of the day, I do this. I open my windows and I'll do some kind of clearing practice to move the energy out of my space and away from me. The other thing is really checking in on, do I have a part that wants to rescue? A lot of people in helping professions do. I sure did. The more that I can trust the inherent ability for each person on this planet to heal and have aliveness, I believe that with every fiber of my being. I just believe that people don't have access. That's the problem. My job is to bring the access, and their system knows how to heal. And it is not my job to play God and control whether or not they choose to. My job is to show up again and again as a non-judgmental, loving force that says, hey, if you want to take my hand, I can show you the way. That's it. That's my job. And my job is to relinquish control over the rest. When we do all of those things, it supports us to be able to have greater regulation in our own system. And again, as I named, a lot of that involves somatic boundary work too. So thank you very much for that question. We'll get to the next one that we have today.
Hey, Sarah, big fan of the podcast and what you're doing. So thank you for this. My question for you is, what do you do when you feel really aligned in your purpose, aligned in your heart, but really undeserving at the same time? Now, I've been in the space I've been doing for 7 years, and I had another business earlier this year that I had to shut down that was a childhood dream business of mine. And I shut it down because my business partner did not want it to work. It was like being married with someone who just didn't want to be married. And I couldn't sacrifice myself anymore because I was just destroying my overall sense of well-being. Also, earlier this year, my girlfriend and I broke up, who is an incredible woman. Absolutely love her. But there was one thing that we just didn't agree on that was a really big thing if you wanted to stay with them for the rest of your life. So I have this part that just feels abandoned, undeserving, and it's manifesting into my entire business.
So the way that we experience or live our lives are going to be a reflection of what those parts of us believe to be true about themselves. So if these little parts of me, that's a vulnerable part of you that believes fully and completely that they don't deserve goodness, they don't deserve success, they don't deserve to be in the spotlight, they don't deserve abundance because they are not inherently good, lovable, or enough. And that means that along the way, that was the messaging they got. And by the way, even from loving parents who may have got that messaging. Or others of us, we got a message from our parents that it isn't good to take up too much space. You should be humble. And what they're confusing is meekness, which we don't want, with being arrogant. Here's the thing that's true about everything in nature. I use nature as a teacher all the time. Nature wants everything inside of it to blossom and be in its fullness. The universe, divine, God, whatever you call that, nature, mystery, it wants everything to thrive. But when we've had experiences where that inherent experience that you as a young one, you were supposed to thrive. You were supposed to take up a lot of space. You were supposed to be totally you. But if that was not welcomed, if we were told we were being too much, if we were told we were going to hurt people in our bigness, then we learn to become small. Or we learn and we create this internal agreement that the only way I can have success is through my suffering. That's something that I did. If I worked really hard and sacrificed everything else in my life and was basically, in suffering, then I could have this goodness. And otherwise, I can't because there are other people in the world that have less or don't have anything. And that's where I came from. And I never want to make anyone else feel bad. And how could I possibly leave those people behind? This is something that I really felt for such a long period of time in my life. But here's the truth. It is our thriving that allows others to thrive. I live near a really cool botanical garden. And could you imagine if all the roses, like there's a beautiful rose garden, if all the roses were like, I don't know, we probably shouldn't be too beautiful because we don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I'm just going to die. I'm just going to be kind of wilty. That's what I'm going to do. And the other one's like, I'm going to get rid of all my leaves. That's what I'll do. And then people would show up at the botanical garden. They'd be like, oh, well, this isn't as enjoyable. Why? Because we like seeing things in their thriving. And the same is true for you. When you are in your purpose and you are thriving, you help the world in the most miraculous way. This thing, whatever we're doing here, and lots of people call it different things. I've named all the things that people call it, probably many more things too. I fully believe that each of us have different things that we came here to do, that we're here to do. And when you embody these callings that you have, they're the kind of things where you feel it and you can't put it down. You're like, oh, I just really want to do this thing. When you actually step towards it in your bigness, in your fullness, and you embody it, what happens is the world reaps so many rewards. You get a lot, but the world gets way more. And so what we have to do is we have to work with that younger part of you. Who is that part? You must begin getting to know him, and you must fall in love with him. And he must know that you are never, ever, ever going anywhere. The more you do that, and he knows that you are his rock, you aren't going anywhere, the more you show him that he deserves to receive without suffering. Like, can you imagine a kid? You're like, yeah, if you want to have my attention, you better suffer first. Oh my gosh, right? No, of course not. The more that you do this, you build your capacity to receive. And then I have to tolerate the discomfort of that receiving. And remembering that the world needs beacons of light that are fully expressed, because that provides a path for other people to become fully expressed. And when you're in your purpose, abundance comes to you because you're giving a lot. It's the law of the universe. So what we give, we receive. And when I say receive, it can look like a lot of different things. Like the last question, that kind woman just said that thing that, oh my gosh, what a compliment when she said, if I could sit down and have coffee with anybody, it would be you. Whoa, what a thing to receive. Like, thank you. Oh my goodness. That's what I mean by abundance coming to you. So I don't want everybody to think like this just means financial abundance. Abundance in so many ways. This is what happens. We have to build our capacity to it. Otherwise, what we're going to do is attract like business partners, like you named, who inhibit our ability to come into that abundance. And we may also avoid relational experiences that might be really good for us, or we call in ones that aren't good for us or aren't exactly right. So this is the work. The more you do it, the more you come into the life that you're here to live. And that's what the world needs. Let's get to the last question we have today.
Hi, Sarah. First of all, thank you so much for the work that you do. My question is regarding when one of my clients can't make their appointment. I own my own business and work within the wellness industry. And when one of my clients can't make their appointment for whatever reason, I find myself getting really frustrated, aggravated, and even angry. And to be honest, it just makes me want to throw it all away. I just feel like I cannot be bothered dealing with it. And I would love some advice of like where this could be coming from and how to move through it. I don't know if it's because I get frustrated that they can't show up for themselves, but there's also the financial aspect of it as well, where I just think that if there's one less person coming, that's one less person that I get paid for. I definitely grew up in a household that was very emotionally neglectful and very controlling, and I find that working on my safety and my security within myself is something very important. So I'd love your advice on this.
So these are parts of you showing up. That is not adult you. I think there's actually two parts here that are likely showing up. So when a client doesn't show up or they cancel last minute, it is likely triggering a vulnerable part of you, that vulnerable part you talked about that was neglected and not chosen and no one showed up for them. So the way our nervous system works is it's looking for how might this experience be like the past. And your nervous system is saying that's enough like this past experience that it reminds me of it. And all of a sudden we travel time and now you are feeling what that precious little kid felt. I am not chosen. I am not important. I am not worth showing up for. And then their protector comes online immediately. That might be you get frustrated, you get angry, you want to throw it all away. That's the part that says, I don't want the vulnerable part to ever feel this pain again, so let's just burn the whole house down. Isn't that all really smart how that works? Now, the other part that I think is showing up is the part of you, a younger part of you that feels like they're not going to be okay. They're not safe. And you have a protective part that developed and said, I can make you feel safe by controlling finances and making sure that there's enough. And if there's enough, you'll be okay. Now, obviously, we all need to have our primary needs met in order to have a sense of safety. Yes. But when we have a hypervigilant protective part that is always focused on how there isn't going to be enough, that's a clue they're protecting a part that doesn't feel safe. So I think both of those scenarios are occurring. What must happen is we got to get ourselves anchored in adult us. So what I want you to think about is a moment where you're super regulated as you're working with clients. You feel in flow, you feel like adult you. And I want you to anchor into that part and ask yourself, what is that part's truth about this? How does this version of me feel? And it's going to be wildly different. And then you have to take that adult you and start reparenting those younger parts. And remind that little one that was neglected and no one showed up for, that you are always going to show up for them. If you do that internal work enough, this stops being triggering. That's the whole point of parts work. The parts integrate. And then the thing that used to be triggering for me isn't. And what I can tell you in doing this work for a very long time with, way over 10,000 people at this point, is that we all have protective parts. And my job is not to rescue anyone, and my job is not to control anyone. And what I actually do is I just as I respect my own protective parts, I respect everyone's. And so when I'm working with clients, like in a group program, let's say, something that I focus on is maybe I'm going to give people tools they're going to practice throughout the week. And what I'll say is, I am just as interested in you not doing them as you doing them. Because if you say, I did it for a day and then I stopped, amazing. Let's look at the protective part that got in the way. Let's get to know them. Who are they? Of course, they're threatened by this work, because for them, the fear is the vulnerable part is going to be exposed and they're not going to be okay. So, hey, let's get to know that part. There is no wrong. There is no mistake. And the other thing that I answered in a previous question is, the more that I am anchored in, how am I meant to serve the world? How am I meant to serve the world? The more I can relinquish outcome, and I can come purely from a place of service. Years ago, I was meditating and in prayer around the work that I am here to do. These words came to me, and I probably said them like 100 times over and over again. Let me be the light that helps them come home to themselves and to you. By the way, if you're like, I'm not a spiritual person or a religious person, you doesn't have to mean anything besides your highest self. You just come home. And so I feel that fully. That's my job, to be regulated, to be in that light of love. That is love. And to be a steady presence that says, hey, there is a way. If you would like it, I can show you or help. And I have to let go of the outcome. And if I'm really in service from that place, by the way, that's being in service from a very clean way. There's no agenda of any part of me. And the more that we do that, in fact, the more boundaried we are, to go back to the other person's question, the more boundaried we can be when we are in our work. And the things that were historically triggering for us, like what you're talking about, no longer are. And as always, we do this one tolerable step at a time. Every single person, I believe, is a leader in some particular way in your life. And the more that you regulate your nervous system and reparent your parts, the more you lead from your wholeness, the more you help the world heal, and the more, most importantly, you enjoy the process too. Enjoying this episode and want to go even deeper into somatic healing? You can join my email community for weekly teachings, tools, and live events. Click the show notes to join.